Hi, today we will be talking about how to find the gap analysis in your genome annotation. And the purpose of finding the gap analysis is basically to highlight any large overlaps or gaps that you may have in between genes and see if those should be further looked at. And so there's a couple of different scenarios that you're going to encounter in your genomes. The first is that you're going to encounter forward genes that are just forward to forward. So for example, in the case of gene 2, we can use this little bar down here as a guide, but we're going to be looking at the space between gene 1 and 2. And so we want to find the difference between the start of gene 2, which is the 5' end, minus the end of gene 1, which is the 3' end. And so when we do that, we find that we have a difference of -3. And so the negative symbol is indicating that we have an overlap between these genes. And so that's how you'll notate any overlaps that you may have. And then you may also have times where you're going to be going from reverse to reverse. So let's take a look at gene 5. So it's just going to be the opposite for reverse genes. So we're going to be looking at the difference between the end of gene 6 and the start of gene 5. And so just keep in mind that you're going to be looking at the 3' to the 5' instead of the 5' to the 3' in the case of reverse genes. And so we end up with a gap of 0 in this case. And then you're also going to encounter times where you're going from reverse to forward. So if we look at gene 7, we can look down here and we're going to be looking at the start of gene 7 and also the start of gene 6. But in this case for gene 7, it'll be the 5' you're looking at and it'll be the 3' that you're looking at with gene 6. And so we end up with a gap of 353. Now, this is a pretty large gap, so you may want to use other annotating tools to see that this is a acceptable gap, or if you may want to extend your start. Okay, and then you may also have times where you're going from forward to reverse. And in this case, we can see down here, we're going to be looking at this gap right here. And in this case, we actually aren't going to have any gap notated in our genome because we're going to end up just looking at the 3 to the 4, that space there, and then the 5 to the 6, that space there. So you don't need to worry about that. And then one last thing, when you're looking at gene 1 in your annotations, for gene 1, you can just put a gap of 0 because there's no gene coming before it, and so you're not going to have any gap in that case. Thanks for watching. Hope this helps with your annotation.